before moving forward, this is where I'd like to say that remember that these are characters that we're playing and not the real things. They're pre-written scripts. With that, I think Bernadette, you're going to take on this one, right?
Yeah, I just also want to get an initial thoughts. What were we thinking about the process of doing roll call and the addition of the questions? Yeah, Rahab, in front of me.
Um, I think the roll call and the process of doing questions would be nice as like a little icebreaker if the questions weren't inherently bigoted. Because him asking Rosa, I believe that was her name, where she's from really is a racist question, xenophobic question really, because is asking her ethnic background, and every other question was quite fun, lighthearted. So it was taking her ethnicity or nationality and othering her by it.
Yeah, that's her first introduction to the course, is suddenly being outed and othered. So thank you so much for bringing that to the conversation. Cameron, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I agree with Rahab, because that was kind of, all the other questions were so just like icebreakers, and that one he kind of grilled her almost. He was like, no, where are you really from? Like before Toronto, where are you from? So like it wasn't even like he was trying to hide it. Like he was just outright being a little racist about it. And like you could tell she was disappointed by it. She turned her camera off right away. So I think it's a good idea in theory, and the first few questions were okay, but he kind of got too personal with it.
There was kind of this digging that was happening in a way, like he assumed that there was a different answer. Thank you. Mo, could you express your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna second Cameron as well. So like I do agree with the he was kind of othering her, and when he first asked the question, she said she was from St. Catharines, and then he repeated it, and she said where she was originally before she was in St. Catharines. It just seemed like it wasn't enough, and it seemed like it wasn't the right answer when it is a response at the end of the day, and you should respect wherever they're telling you they're from. At the end of the day, that is where they are from. If they are living there and that's where their parents are, or that's where they resided, that's an answer. That's a completely valid answer.
No, definitely. I want to add in this layer of, Mr. M being a professor. Does that power influence how Rose's character responded? Rahab, I see your hand.
I definitely think it influenced how she responded, because if it wasn't professor, but it was a classmate, I think there'd be more willingness to confront. However, the professor deals with your grade, also your degree if you fail, and your future. So you don't really want to risk it by confronting him about it. However, there is a forced complacency that she's put into.
Almost having to like please this power that's asking her for stuff. Saj.
Yeah, I would say it does, because as a professor, he is kind of leading the class in a sense. I would agree with Rahab. Like, let's say if it was just a classmate, then I guess she would respond differently. Because he is sort of leading the class, it's kind of like he's automatically placed in that authority. So the way she responds to him will be different.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I want to move into an activity called hot seating, and we're in a great position where we actually have the actor Mike, who played Mr. M in the scene here. And what hot seating is essentially we take Mike and we put him on a hot seat, and we openly ask questions to him, and he'll respond in character with the reasons why he might have made specific choices. So Mike, are you ready?
I think so.
I'll start off with our questions today and ask, what do you teach?
What do I teach? I teach mostly introduction courses, either for things like English or drama.
So you're like a first year kind of professor.
That's what I've mostly been teaching as of late. Yeah.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. M? Jump in, no pressure to raise a hand.
What are the demographics in your class typically like?
The demographics, that's a really great question. I don't have the specific data with me, but I'd say that generally it's a fairly mixed group. The majority of times I would say it leans mostly white, but I don't have the specifics to be able to give like the exact answers for that.
Have you asked this question before to one of your students?
Probably. It's generally just I have a list of a bunch of different questions that I've asked, and I'm always just curious about, wanting to, get to know each other and be able to bring in sort of people's personalities and things about them into the classroom. So yeah, I've probably asked it before.
Would you have asked that question to a white student like myself, potentially?
I think so. I like to ask it online, especially because it's something where, we could be zooming in from a bunch of different places and all of that. And I'm always curious where people are actually calling in from. So I don't think that I would make it specifically towards racialized people.
So I have a quick question then. When she did respond and gave you two different answers, St. Catharines and Toronto, why was that not enough?
I just was curious. I had a feeling that she might have been from somewhere else, and I wanted to know that if she was, where that was. And I didn't want her to be shy in terms of having to say that. I wanted to make sure there was an open area where people could be truthful and honest.
What drew you to ask her that question specifically and not any of the others?
I think just generally it seemed like something in the moment. I don't know that I was doing specifics. Like I said, I had a list in front of me.
Did you notice her camera went off?
I did after, and I wasn't really sure how to respond. Sort of afterwards, I realized that maybe I had pushed a little too far, and wasn't sure whether or not to say something or address it. But I did notice, yeah.
How do you think the other kids in the class responded to what you said?
I don't know. I hope not too negatively. I think, again, just trying to make that welcoming environment. And obviously, I think I might have failed in doing that. And I hope that they weren't too negative in terms of the responses and the reaction.
Do you think you would continue using that question in future classes?
After this one, probably not. Probably not. I think definitely leave some more lighthearted ones and try and think about those more carefully and with more respect, and also, taking answers as they're being given and honoring those as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. M, for allowing us to question you. You can come out of character now, and I'll ask your favorite character. And I will ask everyone, were you satisfied by Mr. M's answers? Did it change your way of viewing the scene, or did it maybe solidify some emotions? Or have? I saw your hand briefly. You don't have to.
I feel like some of his answers were slightly dismissive, or he didn't grasp the full context of what he was asking her. necessarily. It was more reactive based, but not really dismantling why he would ask that question or why there was some persistence to it.
Kind of more of a surface level response to
Yeah.
keep himself safe. Excellent. Mo.
So I also agree with that too. He kind of felt like he was dismissing a lot of the questions, making genuine concerns or you know questions that arise, kind of dismissing how somebody feels and kind of making them think that I'm only asking this question just because I'm interested or anything like that. It's also a little bit. I feel like he's not grasping the idea that it is very invasive as well, especially when someone gives responses and then you are digging further and further. And how he also said that he wanted to make them feel safe and open to be able to like say where they're from and be comfortable with that. But what if they're not? She made definite signs that she was uncomfortable with the question when she made her response to St. Catharines and to Toronto. So for that question specifically, that one kind of solidified his thought pattern for me.
Thank you. Madeline?
I found that more of what he was saying was like, I'm sorry she was offended, not I'm sorry I offended her. And I don't think he realizes or is going to implement any changes to make his class more welcoming in the future. He said, oh, I didn't know how to respond after she turned off her camera. So I don't think he's going to make an effort to make it more inclusive and welcoming.
If I can ask a couple questions, Bernadette, I'm just curious. I think this scene a lot also has to do with, in some cases, intent and impact. And so do you think, I guess I'm curious, what was Mr. M's intent and how does it differ from the impact that it had on the students? Rahab.
I think as a professor, each professor has a responsibility to understand and dismantle their own implicit biases, especially if they're working with a variety of demographics. And I don't believe his intent was to cause harm, but I also don't think most people's intent are to cause harm. It's like the saying where everyone thinks they're the superhero of their own story. Like everyone's trying to do the best they can, but it's the impact that what matters, especially if you're hurting people, marginalized or oppressed groups.
I think that's exactly right. The intent might not be to do something, but it's the impact that matters, that it has on the person or people. Nadia, do you have something?
I have a question for you guys too. So let's say we are students and we either ourselves are someone is acting this way to us, or we're a bystander to this kind of situation. I'm just wondering, how do you think we can tackle this? Like, what are some ways that we could actually deal with a situation like this if this was happening to us or to others around us? Rehab, is your hand still up? Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure. Mo?
I just feel like if we see this stuff happening around us, I think the most important thing is to try and sympathize and to just begin to put yourself in their shoes. And if you are in the position where you are able to stand up and, say something, I understand to a prof situation that's a little bit nerve-wracking for any student, especially when there is that power dynamic. But if you see this like anywhere on, like on campus, or if your friends do something like that, or they say something and without thinking about it, just getting them to understand that, hey, to always look back at what you were saying, give it a second thought, see where you could have went wrong, where different interpretations could lie. So just really trying to spread the awareness about being more aware.
Oh, that's great. I love that, Mo. Thank you so much. Rehab, am I saying your name right? I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. And I feel like I'm not.
It's Rahab.
Rehab. Okay, I'm going to write it down really quickly just so I phonetically can spell it. Please speak while I do so.
Okay. I think that the people who are privileged in the situation are not being targeted have not really a responsibility, but it would be beneficial if they speak up for what they believe in, especially if maybe a classmate feels like they can't speak up, but maybe a TA who's more comfortable with the prof can. If you're in a privileged position, you can use your privilege for good and benefit those who are targeted. And that could be beneficial for
I
her.
love that. Thank you so much. Madeline?
Okay, I agree with Rahab. I would say, in this instance, yeah, it's difficult because it is a prof. You don't want to confront the prof directly, but there's definitely like, would it have been easier for a classmate to redirect the situation? Like, oh, hey, I'm from St. Catharines too. That's so cool. And then like help the prof like move on from it.
Yep, great idea as well. I love all of these ideas, guys. Mike, I know you have your hand up. Cameron, did you have your hand up for a second? I just wanted to give you the chance if you wanted to. You're muted. Thank you. Okay. So I'll take that as a no. Okay. Mike?
So I think we have an idea for a scene that we can create if someone is willing to try with me. And the idea that I have for the scene is afterwards at Mr. M's office hours. And Rahab, because you said maybe the TA as someone who has maybe a higher position there speaking up, if someone is willing to try on a role and take that risk, it could be anyone, and role play as this TA going to Mr. M's office or like Zoom office or whatever, and confronting him about what had happened. Would anyone be willing to try that role? Rahab, you want to try it?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So what I'm going to do actually, Rahab, is I'm going to spotlight the two of us. So that way it's just us in the scene. And it's like that we've come on together. Is that okay?
For sure.
Okay. Can I spotlight? Oh, I don't know that
You
I
can pin.
actually.
Can't
Pin
you?
might work. And then can I add to the pin? Add pin. Yay, this works. Okay. So I'll just be like I am in my office doing some sort of work. And Rahab, I'm gonna let you start us off as if you're coming in at any point, okay?
Okay.
Awesome.
Hello, Professor.
Rahab, welcome. What can I do for you?
I just wanted to discuss what happened today in class.
Sure. What happened in class?
When you were persisting on asking Rosa where she's from, I believe it's, yes?
Sorry, no, continue.
I believe it's important to make sure that everyone in the class feels comfortable. So maybe it wasn't the best idea to persist after she asked the question, answered the question multiple times.
Oh, okay. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even realize that I was persisting. Was it that bad?
It wasn't necessarily that it was that bad. It's that it was uncomfortable for her, and it was important to make sure that she's comfortable, especially when it's icebreakers, to make it a bit more lighthearted, so they can just answer the question and go, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely hear you. First of all, thank you for letting me know. It wasn't something that I immediately thought about, but now that you've told me, I'm hearing you. I think what I can do, let me send out an email to the student and give her a direct apology, and if she wants to discuss it, she's more than welcome. But I think I'll reach out first because she's definitely owed that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent plan.
Okay. Anything else, Rahab?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Again, thank you, and I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Yeah. Talk to you later.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much, Rahab, for joining me in that short scene. Really amazing work. that could have been done in a lot of different ways in a lot of different times, depending on how I decided to play that character. But how did you see this scene ending? Do we feel like we're heading towards a resolution or something else? How are we feeling towards this? And Rahab, amazing acting, by the way.
I feel like this is it's definitely you could say it's definitely heading in the right direction, but I feel like the one thing it was lacking was how you are going to fix this in the future, in the sense of what kind of questions are you going to use, what kind of questions are you going to exclude from icebreakers, what questions, like I just want to know, like, is a teacher genuinely more aware of the different, not just this one question about where they're from, but just other questions that can be invasive and can make students feel uncomfortable.
That's a great question. Is Mr. M a changed professor, or does he see this as one hiccup in his own classroom? Cameron.
I think it's a step in the right direction that he's going to give her an apology and that he recognizes that he owes her that. But it's also, it doesn't give me much hope for him as a person because he didn't even realize in the first place that he was being so persistent. So it just seems like it's something he does without thinking about it too much, which can be a really hard habit to correct.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Rahab.
I would like to agree with Cameron. I think if there's any big changes going to happen, it's going to have to be from the professor actively wanting to change himself. And if a TA per se would talk about the systemic or racial issue that behind the question, it might feel like he's being targeted more of a discussion, and that might cause difficulty in the school environment, especially since there still is a hierarchy involved in it. So I think if the professor wants to change, he will. However, if he doesn't, there's no hope in it, really.
Right. At the end of the day, the onus is on him. Nadia.
Rehab, I just had a question for your character. How did you feel while talking to Mr. M?
Oh, there's definitely a power imbalance, and there's you don't want to say the wrong thing because they're technically, like, if it was this job environment, it's like your boss, like they're in a sense. So you just need to be wary of that. It's kind of like a like in a hospital setting, it's like that doctor nurse hierarchy where it should be like a partnership, but it really isn't. And their view of you can alter your educational or work experience dramatically.
I just had one more question, and this is me projecting personally. But as someone who was marginalized, I personally might feel a little bit more fear confronting a professor who might have just conducted a microaggression against another marginalized student. I was just wondering how you felt as a marginalized student going up to this professor and trying to tackle this. Did you feel like there was any more pressure or weight, or did you feel, I was just curious.
Oh yeah, I agree. There's definitely more pressure, right, than for like a white male student going in, because it doesn't directly affect them and it feels like a conversation about other people, more not as a conversation about yourself. Because I know when there's microaggressions happening towards other people of color, it can feel personal in a way.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you sharing your lived experience with us.
No worries.
I think
you've
that,
done some.
sorry, Bernadette.
I think we've done some great work with the scene. With that, I think we'll transition to our final one.